everyone, and welcome to the 2K Sports Season Preview Show. I'm Greg Gumbel along with my partner Clark Kellogg, and we're ready to give you your first taste of all the big names and top teams that'll define this season. We're looking ahead to what should be an amazing year in college basketball, so let's take a look at the preseason top 25 poll and see who starts the season at the top of the heap. Here are the Big Five, the top teams in the country as we begin the season. The Connecticut Huskies come in as the #1 ranked team, followed by Duke, Texas, Washington, and LSU. What do you think of the top 5 teams going into the year, Clark?
Those are some terrific teams, Greg, and the thing I find most fascinating about the top 5 is the number of contrasting styles we see here. These teams couldn't be more different, and I love when we have that kind of diversity at the top of the poll.
The Connecticut Huskies are projected as the favorites here in the early going. They're playing in one of the toughest conferences in the nation. How should that affect them, Clark?
That'll work to their advantage, Greg, because they'll have been through so many battles by the time March rolls around, tournament pressure won't bother them at all.
Duke is in the #2 spot. They carry over 3 starters from last year, so there shouldn't be too much of a learning curve for this team.
Yeah, they've got the core of that team coming back, and that's going to be huge for them. There won't be much of the feeling out process that so many other teams will have to work through early in the season.
Texas comes in as #3. They were unstoppable last season, finishing with 30 wins.
Matching that record is going to be a challenge, but they've simply got to forget about the past and get to the business of winning games right here, right now.
Washington starts the year as the 4th-ranked team. One bit of good news for them, they have last season's leading rebounder coming back for another year.
With that low-post presence already established, they'll have a little bit of swagger heading into the season. I look for them to be sharp right from the start.
LSU is the #5 team. They lost a big piece of their team with the departure of last season's leading rebounder.
It's going to have to be a group effort on the boards for a little while until some of the younger big men get the confidence to hold their own game in and game out.
Here's the next group of teams in our preseason top 25. What's your impression of that set of teams?
We've seen plenty of future national champions come out of this group from the middle of the top 25. I'm not willing to say just yet whether that is going to happen again this year, but a few teams certainly have the potential.
The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, the #12 team, have been talked about quite a bit as we head into the season. They were the NCAA tournament runner-up a year ago, and I'm sure the memory of that loss stayed with them over the summer.
We've seen very few championship game losers come back the next year and make it back to the title game, let alone win it. So they've got a little bit of history to contend with.
The Syracuse Orange, the #6 team, have also generated a lot of interest. They've got a whole crew of high school Mr. Basketballs on this team.
A team is usually happy to land one Mr. Basketball, but with the number they have, this could be a golden era of basketball success at this university. There's nothing but good times ahead.
Okay, Clark, let's take a look at the teams that close out the preseason top 25 poll. How about this list?
I think there were a few teams that were slighted and should probably be in the top 25 ahead of some of these teams. But I'll hold my tongue and talk about the teams that do deserve to be here.
The Arizona Wildcats, the #18 team, could be one to watch. They have no fewer than 3 former high school Mr. Basketballs on this team.
There are a lot of differences between the high school and college games, but give me 3 former Mr. Basketballs, and I think I could field a pretty good team, just like the one we're looking at.
The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, the #19 team, are also worth keeping an eye on. Certainly, they'll get a big boost from the return of their leading scorer from a year ago.
That's a big advantage for them. They don't have to spend the first few weeks of the season searching for that go-to guy. They know who he is, and they'll use him.
There was no shortage of movement in the coaching ranks during the offseason. Here are all the new coaches in college basketball this season. There are quite a few interesting names on the list. Coach Willard is one of the hires that drew a lot of media attention. The Oregon State Beavers have a lot of fans that are delighted to have a coach of his ability, Clark.
He's never been to the Final Four, but he's hoping that this will be the coaching stop that gets him there. And this university and its fans are hoping the exact same thing.
Coach Casper also made a move to a new school, and that's generated some excitement on that campus. The Wyoming Cowboys are a team looking to rebuild under their new leader.
This is a big break for him. He's paid his dues with a lot of stops along the coaching highway, and now it's time for a new beginning. We wish him all the success in the world, Greg. He definitely deserves a fair shot.
We've come to the part of the show when we look at the top players in the nation and unveil the list of our preseason All-Americans. There before you are the 5 first-team All-Americans as we begin the season, and what a list it is. The Texas Longhorns are pinning their hopes squarely on this young man's shoulders, Clark.
Kangara is the first player on the list for good reason. Feels like this guy's been playing college basketball forever. This will be his 4th year as a starter, but I still don't take him for granted, and I think this will be his best season of all of them.
As for our next first-teamer, UCLA, he is more than willing to go into battle with him, Clark.
Lambert is simply a spectacular player. We always talk about the guys with great hands. Well, he's got great feet. I love those happy feet. There are few players in the nation with better footwork than him, and that's what allows him to always be in the right position, whether it comes to rebounding or finding space for an open shot.
Next up is a player that's drawing comparisons to some of the all-time college greats. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets are fortunate to have him in their corner.
Leg is one of my favorite players in the country. He can make things happen on the basketball court thanks to his unique ability to read and understand defenses, while most players are just trying to come up with their next move. He's 3 steps ahead of the game, and that's what separates the good players from the great.
Let's move on to a player who's worked very hard to earn his spot on the list. The Kansas Jayhawks can depend on a solid effort from him each and every night.
Webb is going to play a huge role in his team's success. He certainly wasn't afraid to mix it up inside last season. He came away with an average of 7 rebounds a game. That's just another aspect of his game that I expect to get better this season, and that's frightening to even think about.
And finally, we have another superb player to round out the first team. The Duke Blue Devils will probably get used to seeing him make the impossible look ordinary.
Dennis is going to have his own personal highlight reel by the end of this season. He made his conference all-freshman team last season, so he's already proven to the nation and to himself that he belonged on this level. This season, it's no longer about proving he belongs, but proving he's among the best of the best.
Now let's move on to the second team All-Americans. Not such a bad list, huh? These elite players all have the potential to have historic seasons if the right pieces fall into place. The Louisville Cardinals have built their team around this young man's talent, and I'd say that's a pretty good idea.
Atako was close to a spot on the first team, but there was too much competition this season. He's got a mean streak running through him, and that's exactly what you need to be a dominant rebounder like he is. He's the leading rebounder on his team, and he relishes that role.
The next player on the team is a sensational player in his own right. Georgia Tech is in for a great year if he lives up to his potential.
Kahn is in the spotlight for all the right reasons. If I had to pick some frontrunners for the Player of the Year award, he would be right there on the list. I've seen him take over games even when he isn't scoring 30. There are some great scorers among these All-Americans, and he's one of them, but he does much more than score.
We can all look forward to some very exciting highlights from this young man this year. The LSU Tigers are looking for a lot of production from him, and they probably won't be disappointed.
Henson is an extremely powerful weapon for his team. He was a multiple threat on the offensive end of the court last season, and there will be more of the same this time around. He led his team in scoring, and it's a lock that he'll do it again.
Our next All-American may have designs on the first team by the end of the season. UCLA has one of the most reliable go-to guys in the country in him.
Millsap is one of the great talents in the college game today. He was his conference's Player of the Year last season, and there's no doubt he'll be back in the running for that award this year, too. In fact, he may have some say in the race for National Player of the Year.
And here we have the final player on our list of All-Americans, the Washington Huskies. Know who their fan favorite is going to be this year.
Knox is ready to have a breakout season. He's a 6'11" junior center. This is a big man who produces big time, and he does it on a consistent basis. Unless an opposing team can counter with a big bruiser of their own to keep a body on him, he's going to run amok.
All right, Clark, that should do it for us here in the studio. For myself and all of us here at 2K Sports, thanks for watching our season preview.